We are live. Welcome to 0607 End of the Line Thoughts. 2006 or 2007 film. Yeah, 2006 or 2007, depending on. I forget which is which, but IMDb says it's one and Rotten Tomatoes says it's another. So, if you don't care about these disclaimers, I try to keep them short and relevant, but your mileage may vary. You can skip right ahead to the first section via the description box. This contains spoilers, and I record this as soon as I can get to the computer after watching the movie. Now, I may swear in this video since there is some swearing in the movie. I am definitely going to talk about some of the material in it that got it the age rating that it got. This is not a review. This is a series of, well, thoughts. Some of it is analysis, some of it is jokes, etc. Thoughts that I had while watching, goes in chronological order, as well as before watching, separated into the first two sections, time codes in the description box. Then the final section, I can stuff I think it's worthwhile to get into on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, and Wikipedia. And before recording this vlog, I had read all of it, though I may have forgotten some of what I read by the time of recording, since some of it I read weeks, possibly even a month ago. If you're not interested in the contents of all three sections, I invite you to only watch the ones you are interested in. And I'm not currently sure if I'm going to do another review on this, since I already did do one, but I'm not currently planning on it, so don't hold your breath. I'll go blue in the face. And this video is not me saying I'm smarter than you or know more or know better than you. The stuff I say in this video, I'm not saying only I could or have thought of it. It's just stuff I want to talk about and think others would enjoy listening to. I will in this video discuss an issue that doesn't affect me or doesn't affect me as much as it does certain minorities. I'm not trying to lecture those that it affects. In part, I'm speaking to others who are not in those minorities, so we can better empathize with those minorities, and in part, I am expressing my interpretation of the material without claiming it's as valid as the interpretation of the members of the minorities. Now, when I talk about the quality of what I'm doing video on, I try to strike a good balance between being appreciative of both intentions and results, criticizing things I genuinely feel should be criticized, and I try to judge the subject on its own terms. Obviously, you cannot expect this movie to be able to quite deliver the same as a big budget, movie that was made with a studio. This was, as far as I understand, independent, and then he got it to, the writer, director, editor, producer, Maurice Devereaux, got it to, he managed to sell it so that he could, have it. He managed to get it distributed. I'm not sure if it's so, whatever. This did not have a studio behind it, so you can't expect, the best you can expect is that they do a good job of hiding their limitations, and I think they do a quite good job. And I define a good movie as one where the good outweighs the bad, and vice versa for a bad movie. This can mean that a movie otherwise mostly good or bad, I consider actually overall bad or good. And this movie I would definitely say is good. This is a case where I don't think there are very many weaknesses to the movie. I feel like I don't want to say that anyone is wrong. You're entitled to your opinion. But when I read some of the reviews, some of the negative reviews, it seems like this wasn't really their kind of movie. And it's fine to, if you decide to give a negative review to a movie that isn't really for you, that's up to you. But I feel that for people who, if this movie caters to your tastes, you probably are gonna like it. I did see some reviews that were still negative, but when it comes to horror movies, it's such a huge, there's such an incredible variety of horror movies, and sometimes you see negative reviews from horror movie fans when it's clear that this is just not the kind of horror movie they want to watch. I don't. You're not gonna see me do reviews of torture porn, because that's just not my genre. I do that. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into some discussion of whether that's the kind of horror that goes too far. I'm not talking about that here. it's not my genre. I don't like that kind of movie, so I just don't. I very rarely review it, and when I do, I try to focus on other things. I don't think it's necessarily the most useful criticism to give, to say, well, this wasn't my kind of movie, and because of that, it's bad. Now, I have done other videos on the subject, and the links will be in the description box. Now, let's see. And since I've made other videos, I will try not to restate what I said there. I got this on sale, so anything negative I say in this video is not out of bitterness. And I watched a few YouTube videos about this movie before watching it, but I didn't find a lot. And my DVD, I've read that some others have copy. There's more than one DVD of this movie out there, and I don't have the one that has a commentary track and all this kind of stuff. Sounds great. If I find another copy, I checked the the copies that I could find access to are the ones without any special features. Excuse me. I first watched this in the year 2011 and have watched it at least once since, possibly only once since. I don't really know why. Uh, I guess, I mean, this whole thing with me watching movies more than once is a little newer I didn't used to do that, so it doesn't mean like I'm gonna watch this movie a lot more times. But yeah, I think it's maybe been 2 years, 1 or 2 years since I last watched it, and let me think. At that time, I think I had already decided that I wanted to do more videos on it. Now, and yes, and I, just got done watching it again, so fresh in my mind and everything. And yeah, I got this. I was out buying DVDs, and this one immediately attracted me due to the cover, which I suppose I know that I think the most common cover for the DVD actually features the demons, and apparently Maurice Devereaux himself has said that was not my call. I would not have. I had to give them that level of freedom over it for them to distribute it. I really wish they hadn't done that, but I guess it sells more DVDs. I'm not going to hold my copy up right now. I might at the very end of the video, but it's thrown off the autofocus sometimes, so I don't want to risk that. Excuse me. I thought I got done clearing my throat before recording. Apologies. Right. My cover, I'm going to very briefly describe, has a cross with Jesus on it. It's not the exact dagger that they have in the movie. It's it's completely red, and there's some blood on the blade at the bottom of the cross, and then behind the cross there's this vague face with completely white eyes. It's definitely not one of the demons because they've got glowing red eyes. But yeah, nowhere on my cover or on the disc itself. The disc itself is pretty much, yeah, it's the same image as the cover. Nowhere on my cover do you see the demons, and I really do think that's the right choice. So yeah, the cover, the back of the cover says 28 days later meets The Hills Have Eyes, and the apocalyptic end of the line, an award-winning, critically acclaimed horror about human and supernatural darkness alike. And yeah, well put, very well put. And the inside of the cover, see, it does score some points with me because it advertises the Trilogy of the Dead, but then it does also lose some points because it also advertises the Day of the Dead remake, which is a dreadful movie. I'm not currently planning on reviewing that one. I'm not sure I would have that much to say that Phaelus didn't, so just go watch his review. If, in general, watch his stuff, So, Right. When I bought it, I had not heard of the, the movie before. I hadn't heard of the work of the people making it before. Now, let's see. And yeah, I already mentioned my DVD has no special features, so I can't comment on the special features that I've seen others talk about. So if that's something you're looking for, I think some of the reviews that you can find if you go to IMDb, look up the movie, and go to external reviews, I think some of those commented on it some. And let's see. Yeah, I would overall I would say I've seen the real cover, the main cover on IMDb, so I know what that looks like. I prefer this cover. I like it's relatively minimalist. The cover that shows the demons also shows the subway tunnel and some I think some people fleeing or something like that. Other than the demons, I do like that, but I overall prefer this one. Now, let's see. My opinion of this did change due to my second viewing, where I knew everything that would happen and noticed things that I didn't on the first. Especially the ending hit much harder. And I already loved it on the first viewing, but I loved it way more on this second viewing, 2 years ago or something. And honestly, I don't me only getting to this now is not a reflection on, I've wanted to do this for a long time, but the way I organize my list of movies I'm going to review, it just, yeah, uh, other stuff kept getting put in front of it, basically. Also, it was only, I forget how long by now, maybe 3 years by now, 2 years, I don't know, that I decided I was going to do more videos on movies I'd already covered. So, otherwise I would have covered, I might have done videos on this much, again, 2011 was when I did the old videos. Excuse me. So, one thing was I noticed that on the first viewing, I didn't necessarily love the design of the demons, but on the second viewing, I noticed. Excuse me. On the second viewing, I noticed that's the design you see in the drawing that Karen looks at the very start of the movie. They're it's not the people standing with their backs turned, but they're like climbing on the windows of the train car. And you also see them in the drawing she opens in the real world outside of the nightmare. Excuse me. And I'm not entirely sure I'm going to make a lot of jokes about this, but again, some of the stuff I wrote down for this, I wrote down a while ago, weeks ago. So, but anyway, me making jokes about this should not necessarily be taken as me thinking the thing I'm joking about is actually bad, me wanting to make light of the subject, etc. I simply find it very difficult not to MST3K and overanalyze everything I watch and play. Thankfully, I no longer get extremely critical of it, but overanalyze, I can't not. Now, let's see. I don't have a problem with violence and gore in general. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies and movies in general. Also, Cronenberg's The Fly, as well as Videodrome. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be criticizing the violence or gore, although there was one or two times where I thought, why is the blood coming from there? It should be. Anyway, I don't have a problem with film sexuality, nudity, disturbing, or exciting material. In general, Monster is one of my favorite movies. And let's see. Yeah. So, my own quote unquote film critic rating for this is an 8 out of 10, and my personal rating is a 9 out of 10. So, that brings us to the first section, which is entitled Absolutely Nothing. It can get its own plate. There. Notes taken while watching. sorry, like I said, I can't help it. Cannot help MSG3K. And oh right, sorry. Here we go. Yeah, got a little too eager when what's it called? Scrolling. And yeah, so the movie starts, and immediately we have this tense, suspenseful music, really haunting, as the camera travels as a POV of one of the subway trains through these really dark tunnels as the credits roll. I really love the opening dream sequence. You know, first the people with their backs turned, you know, it's they strike a good balance between it. It's I mean, it's a subway train. Of course, some people are going to be facing away from you, you know, but at the same time, there's something a little bit wrong. You know, the way it's filmed and edited, the audio, it's creepy, but you know, it's only then she you know she gets out the drawing and then she raises it and it's like, okay, that's really creepy. She is literally looking at a drawing of almost exactly what she is seeing. You know, the really, it's a very, yeah, what's it called? The drawing is a very accurate representation of what she's seeing, with a few key, you know, yeah, I guess it's only really, there's one main thing that's wrong about it, and that's that there are these demons crawling on the windows, you know, but you know, the even without that, just the what how could she be looking at a drawing of what she's seeing, you know, and she lowers it, and suddenly the you know, humans with the melty mouths and the I guess it's a melty mouth face that's on the cover. Yeah, yeah, because they've got like white eyes, the melty mouth. At least in the nightmare, not the Asian man that the you know the Karen's former patient sees. He has normal looking eyes basically, but yeah, you know, and the let's see, yeah, they're like really close to her, and it's really creepy, and then she wakes up, you know, and it is like legitimately this, like, I guess I'll talk about it at the end of this section, but something I only fully realized, yeah, I guess on this viewing, some that completely dawned on me on this viewing, is that the melty mouth, I mean, the demons have melty mouths and eyes without pupils as well. So when we see the melty mouthed people, which is always in a dream sequence or a hallucination or something, it's not like we ever see one of the, you know, one of the cult members like that, for example. It's always these, yeah, that's essentially like that's a hint of the demons, because they bear some resemblance to the demons without actually, you know, and that's, I would definitely say that's intentional. Excuse me. Okay, that might have completely cleared it. Sorry about that. I think it's very much intentional, because there are plenty of other designs they could have gone with. You know, the demons could have had like sharp teeth, for example. That's a very common image in horror, because it is something that immediately we're like, you know, I have to stay away from that because sharp teeth, that means predator. Not the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but the, you know, the natural, yeah, like a lion. So let's see. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because actually the again, one of the first times we see it, it's actually, you know, it's the young, it's the patient, it's the former patient who commits suicide right after. You know, she's the one who sees the melty mouth, and they're, you know, but at that point, Karen has already seen like 3, 4 melty mouths in the nightmare. But this young woman, she's actually hallucinating. You know, she's awake clearly, and let's see, at, you know, near the end, Sarah sees that is her boyfriend, right? John, I want to say, as a melty mouth, and he talks, and she can very clearly hear what he's saying and make out, like, and doesn't he say something like we'll be together forever or something, you know? So yeah, it's hinting at the demons without going full, you know. That's something that really I really appreciate. That there are some horror movies that are way too, they're very certain that their monster designs hold up to scrutiny, so they show it very early. And I don't. That's not always. Sometimes that's a great idea. Sometimes it's not. You know, sometimes it does hold up to scrutiny. But in this movie, it really is only at the very, very end that we see the demons. And for one thing, by then we've heard so much talk about the apocalypse and about these demons that, you know, and in different, like, you know, fairly, one of the first things we see some of the cultists do is actually that one of them asks the others to stab him because he's being attacked by demons. And you know, when we finally see them, one of them climbs out of Betty. And you know, in the old video, I wasn't entirely certain if like if it was supposed to be that these are coming out of the cult members or not. But considering that we've seen a lot, you know, I would say in total we've seen maybe a dozen cult members, and some of them were very close to Karen there at the end. They didn't run very far away from her, and we know they died because we saw it. And there at the end, we do see it, and I'm not sure it's quite a dozen, but it's maybe at least half a dozen. I guess there's a chance that that most of those came from some of the non-believers, but it does almost seem like the only way there could be that many is if they did come out of the bodies of the believers, you know. But I'm not sure I have much else to say about that. If that's maybe, I suppose you could interpret that as being that they were right that it's Judgment Day, but they were wrong about their faith, you know, and that's why they're being like, I don't know, or the, yeah, I don't know exactly. But and also just briefly, I don't think I put Harold Camping's name in the notes, so I'm going to briefly bring it up now because I just remembered. Because one thing, I saw at least one person criticize the, you know, the cult idea, and again, you're entitled to your opinion, and I I do think it's too bad if you watch this and you feel that it was like an attack on your faith. I don't get the sense that that's what it's supposed to be. I think it is a criticism of cults, not of Christianity in general. And one thing, but yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up is Harold Camping. I forget, you know, he's done it at least once since this movie came out. I'm almost 100% certain because I was not I was not making videos when this movie first came out in 2006 or 2007. But when I was, you know, years ago when I made videos, when I made a lot of videos on religion, I made, you know, yeah, Harold Camping came out with another prediction that it was Rapture. And I think by the time this movie came out, I think he had predicted it at least twice. And I'll grant that he didn't say, so you should all go out there and kill non-believers, but it did lead some extremists. You know, there was, I heard of cases where some extremists, and I'm not saying, at the end of the day, you're not responsible for, He didn't tell them to do it, but there are people out there who are going to do extreme things if you tell them that extreme things are happening. So I think you should be very careful with declaring that something extreme is happening if you're not sure it's happening, especially if you have an audience like that. And yeah, there were some people who were like, my family, I cannot have my family live through the rapture, and they killed their families. And yeah, so it's not like Maurice Devereaux did not pull this out of thin air. He exaggerated parts of it, but and I'm not sure, ultimately when you see the sermon that he gives on TV, he didn't remind me that much of Harold Camping, but I think it was more supposed to be one of the big televangelists, one of the really aggressive ones, and for that he absolutely nailed it. The guy looks, sounds, and talks like one. Not only the way he talks, but also the things he says is what I'm saying. So yeah, and go back to the chronological notes. Yeah, so here, when she takes the shower, she clearly has the scar on her shoulder, and it's only at the end of the movie that she, and they make sure to show it. It's not just like there's some cuts in the movie where you don't see completely where the cut is, but no, Patrick he's got the knife and he slowly cuts, and like if you again, you may need to watch it more than once, but if you think back to if you mentally compare the yeah sorry either mentally compare or after you've watched the entire movie, if you have the DVD, put it on again, watch just the shower scene. That's definitely the same scar. That is 100%. And when you see him cut her, he's not opening an old scar. That there was her skin there had not been pierced. Period. So the shower very much seems like it's and the shower isn't part of the nightmare. That's clearly after she's woken up. So it would really seem that the shower is taking place after the actual events of the movie, which ultimately the only thing we can completely the only thing that is completely reasonable to deduce from that is that she didn't die there at the end of the movie. When she closes her eyes, opens them, and has this slight smile, and then it cuts to then we get the end credits. The shower must take place after that, which doesn't mean that that it's possible the apocalypse still basically happened, and she's just like maybe she's taking a shower and she's gonna go out and kill herself so she doesn't have to live in this wasteland world that is supposed to happen after. But it does for sure tell us that if you read it like that, I suppose you could choose to, I guess hypothetically, maybe the shower happens like 10 years earlier, or not. I mean, she would look very different. No, like a year earlier, and she was cut in the shoulder for some other reason, and by now it's completely healed. We don't see a scar. I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense to read it as the shower is taking place after the end of the movie, which means that the demons didn't kill her, which really seems to suggest that they weren't actually there, because they really seemed like they were. I get the people that said, oh, they're like doing the does this bug you, I'm not touching you thing, but the at the end of the day, if they actually physically interacted with her, then you can no longer claim it's just a hallucination. But if she only sees it and hears it, it might be a hallucination. And yeah, I think the cut there really it goes with the theory. It helps provide evidence for the theory that they are not actually there. This whole thing is, the demons are a hallucination by people who have consumed the muffins. And the yeah, I think that's about what I have to say about that right now. And really good job, yeah, on the, when the former patient is standing waiting for the train, you know, for one thing, you can tell that she's freaked out, but it also, the way it's filmed, the audience is also uneasy about this, and again, the image of someone with their back turned, and she looks away and looks back, and suddenly he's closer, and it is just, it's very, it's unnerving. There's something unnerving about the it's scary in a way that him just running directly at her wouldn't be. The because we do have, like, once the cultists start attacking people, very close to the end, there's a bit where they attack, I want to say, four survivors in a group. Yeah, three believers attack four survivors in a group, and there's a bit of a fight between them, and when they actually they charge at them, and it's scary. So it's not that the movie is not ever gonna go there, but yeah, there's something scary about, it's like with Michael Myers. You just, there's no connection there. I realize that Michael Myers is not the only slasher killer whose eyes are not visible, but he's someone where, and this is especially something they do incredibly well in the first movie, which I still maintain. I really think you should only watch that one, but if you're gonna watch more than one, and I realize not everybody agrees with me on this, if you're gonna watch more than one, watch the first one, and watch I want to say 2018 is when the most recent sequel came out. Watch only those two. Anyway, he will look at you and you will look at him, but there's no connection there. You can't make eye contact, and it isn't like he's looking at a person. It's not like he's looking at someone that he might, like, at most, your potential prey. He doesn't look at you and like, when you see another person, obviously there are exceptions, but like, a fairly common reaction is just to think, another of my kind. That's not a bad thing. That's, that means I'm not alone. It can be scary to be alone for a really long time, but with him, it's he doesn't look at you and see that, and he yeah, and that's something and even when the guy turns around, you can see you can see his eyes, and he's definitely looking at her. He's seeing her. Excuse me. But it is this very scary. There's clearly something wrong. This is not how it should be. And very convincing when she jumps in front of the train. No wonder they put in the trailer. It's, yeah. Excuse me. Good job on the tracking shot as they walk down the hospital hallway, and we see a number of patients clearly erratic, without it being so out of control that we feel like these guys should not be walking away. They should be helping. And ultimately, sadly, that there is a little bit of, like, it's a depiction of the mentally ill that plays into a fear that there's something, like, that they're dangerous, or there's some kind of, it's not inviting us to empathize that this is a human being who's having some problems and deserves help. It's more like, ooh, stay away from them. And that's, yeah. I do appreciate, at least it's not, there are a lot of Hollywood depictions of hospitals where you know, these are horrible monsters. They're really abusing their patients. You know, Karen and that other guy, they're clearly, I mean, he won't take a pill. She has to give him the shot, and they're not, you know, they don't, yeah, they're not abusive towards him, and yeah. Now, I had forgotten that the Reverend was introduced so early. You know, you see Karen buy a muffin, and you say, you know, what was it? Please give some hope, or something like that. You know, and yeah, she buys muffins, and yeah, you have to wonder, is that why she sees the demons? There's some sort of hallucinogenic in there, and we see her grab the envelope again. So yeah, the movie is doing a great job of subtly connecting the two in our mind. The first time she saw that envelope, it turned out to be a nightmare, but she saw something that couldn't possibly be real. Now she takes a bite of a muffin and picks up the envelope. So we already know there's going to be something, and you know, it's not the same exact thing, but you know, and ultimately what we see, the drawings we see in there, we don't see the exact same thing, but one of them is like chaotic, and there's fire and there's demons, and what Neil sees right before he dies is chaotic and there's fire. There's not demons there, but you know, we don't see very much of it. Maybe there's demons a few seconds after it cuts away from that. So yeah, it, you know, and in the dream, it had, you know, what's written is the name of, you know, I didn't know this, but it's like on IMDb trivia or something, that it's like the name of a hallucinogenic mushroom. I'm pretty sure that's it. That's what I'm going to be referring to it as. But now it says, soon they will reveal themselves. In other words, if you take the mushroom, you will see them. They will, you know, so yeah. And of course, there is also, you know, some interpretations, not of this specific movie, but, you know, some people believe that if you take hallucinogenics, what you see is in a sense real. It's just not, it's not part of our physical reality, but it does sort of exist. It's not just images in your mind. It's that it's unlocking the ability to see them. And I don't think I'm going to be commenting on that. I disagree, but I'm not going to get more into it than that. And you know, and there's this cross on the wall behind her, and it falls when the door opens with another jump scare. And yeah, it's this thing of, you know, she's sitting there looking at these drawings, and there's a, what's it called, the let me think. Yeah, she's, you know, she's seeing these horrifying things, and then the cross falls, and we perceive the cross falling before we realize why it fell, you know. So yeah, there is this, and the cross is this, you know, it's supposed to protect people, so it, you know, falling, and she doesn't go and pick it up, you know, so it's just the protection is gone. And let's see. Yeah, and you know, the jump scares are effective. I really appreciate that they do, you know, after a little while they stop doing them for at least a chunk of the movie, and then near the end there's a few more, but most of the movie it's not really jump scares, and I appreciate that. I think there are horror movies that use jump scares that are very effective, but it's not all, yeah, and this does a really great job of the, yeah. And let's see, yeah, and she changes out of her scrubs, and you know, we can't really see if the scar is still there, and you know, I think it is covered by the shirt she wears when she walks to the subway. Yeah, I think Patrick cuts through it to cut her shoulder, or pushes it with the knife or something there at the end. And I'm pretty sure that you can't hear that, but just in case, that is my, what's it called? Washing machine. That is, I don't know, I forget the explanation, but the way it's standing on the floor, it's not completely, like, what's it called? It's not gonna, it doesn't stay completely still when it's going especially fast. So, but yeah, I've closed the doors between here and the laundry room, and as far as I recall, I've you know, you really can't hear it. I've tested, I've checked, I've listened back to the parts where I can hear it when I'm recording, and but in case that in this instance you can hear it, that's what it is. Now, and the subway station at first appears to be completely empty, and we again see the Reverend. Now it's in front of these magazines, and Karen smiles at, I want to say, we find out his name's Mike, and he is so not used to positive attention from women that at first he figures she must be smiling at someone, like he's like turning around, like who is she smiling at? And yeah, and from right away Patrick is really creepy, pushy, aggressive. He, I forget what, I don't remember what the first thing he says to her is, but right after he says, "Hey, I'm talking to you," just, yeah, excuse me, don't be Patrick. Just that's yeah. And Mike, you know, comes through for Karen by pretending to know her, because for some guys that's the only way they'll leave women alone. If there's another guy there. And she tells him that she doesn't really feel like talking, and he completely accepts that, showing that it wasn't just that he wanted Karen to himself. He does legitimately respect her and her agency. There's no, like, "I just saved you from that guy, the least you could do." No, it's just, that's okay. And she hallucinates what was it, Vivian on the tracks, basically cut in half, but somehow just barely still alive, and like reaching out for her, just really, really, yeah. And again, this is not long after she ate some of the muffin, so if you think to, like, there at the start of the movie, we don't see her have a single hallucination while awake until the until she's eaten some of the muffin. And after that, you know, she hallucinates every so often for the rest of the movie. And nice touch that the magazine is called "Hear the Voice," because that is it. It's like he wants them to focus on his message. And let's see, and if you believe his message, then you're hearing the voice, and you have to want to, kind of. And let's see, what was the other thing? The let's see. And yes, I realized you could also see the name of the magazine a little earlier when we first saw the magazines, but we when I made this note, we saw one of the magazines lying on the floor of the ground, whatever, of the subway station, and we briefly saw the name of it, and that's why I made the note there. And when the train comes to a sudden stop, that is technically another jump scare, but the movie, that's one of the last times there's a jump scare for a long time in the movie. There's another one when the radio comes back on. Let's see. And yeah, and Karen hallucinates someone calling her name, someone jumping out in front of the window outside, and then there's a jump scare. So, what does that say? When Mike and her, something, I don't know. I really appreciate that the movie does not take forever to explain why the train came to a sudden stop, and that the explanation is completely rational. It really lures the audience into thinking that maybe there will be explanations for all of this. And I guess technically, if you believe that the hallucinations are all due to the hallucinogenic, more or less everything is rationally explained. You know, it because the moment that the train just stops, you're like, what was that like? Of course, people know about emergency brakes and such, but no, it's like, why, just because we've already seen strange things, we assume it's a strange thing, but then there's like, no, this is why, you know. And Karen points out the radio as this sort of quality is hard to understand. I don't think I've personally been in a subway but like, I mean, is it set? I guess we don't know for sure if it's set in. I mean, they sound more American than Canadian in like accents and such. So I guess it is America. I don't actually know if I feel like I read somewhere that that is actually very true of Canadian subways, or was it specifically not? I don't remember. Anyway, but yeah, for some it is apparently completely true that it's that bad. And Betty seems so friendly. At first Karen and Mike are not scared, and you know, the as Mike later puts it, so much for my creepometer, I guess. But the let's see, which actually I guess is maybe that kind of suggests that they were on the right track. So sorry. I swear I did not mean for that pun. Anyway, yeah, pun not intended. Absolutely, I assure you. But maybe, you know, or at least Mike's creepometer thinks that yeah, I guess it's a devotee of the cult as well, since Patrick is, it's not the whether or not Patrick was a member, even if he wasn't a member, he would still be intensely creepy. Now, let's see. But yeah, that's like I mentioned earlier. When you see another person, if they seem friendly, if they seem non-threatening, your response is like when they see her, they actually seem sort of relieved. It's like, phew, I felt like we were kind of alone here. And she's also like, oh, I thought I was completely alone in the yeah in the train. And just the relief on her face when she gets the message that they're supposed to kill the unbelievers. And yeah, let's see. I don't, like I said, I don't have any problem with violence, but Mike is stabbed in the back and a lot of blood sprays out. Like, it doesn't look like the blood went the knife went all the way through the what's it called, his, like, she didn't stab through his back and out through the torso. And even if his torso, I don't think it would spray like that. That kind of spray, yeah, I don't know. I guess they felt they needed something there. And Karen tries to talk Betty down, just like if she was at work. We saw something similar when the old patient at the start didn't take his pill. I really appreciate that basically within a minute of the chronological jump, back in time, we see Karen and Mike standing at the train station. So we immediately get this was a chronological jump. Excuse me. Instead of being really confused, it's like, wait, what happened? Now the train is moving again. No, it's like they're clearly standing there at the train station, and you see Patrick come in, and like almost immediately he pulls the emergency brake, and we're like, oh, so that is why why it stopped. And the based on Mike and Karen reacting to the radio thing. Sorry, I'm calling it a radio. I don't know what it's called. I guess a PA system. I'm gonna be calling it a radio. I hope you can live with that. So yeah, let's see. Right. Their reaction to the radio, they're like, what's going on with that radio? They're like, ah, they really should do something about that. Their reaction tells us this is just the way that radio is. Period. So again, it's not some kind of supernatural thing that can't be explained. And we see Patrick, he even admits it himself, that he couldn't wait for the end. He, you know, the he's trying to rape women already. The what's it called? Like it's not that like we don't know the details, but it seems like he believes in, or at least, excuse me, his faith, promotes the idea that there will be this amazing like heaven kind of thing as the afterlife, and presumably he's gonna have sex in that, but he can't wait. And he even says, might be your last chance to have a little fun. So even before the sermons have been saying things might end really soon, or are ending really soon. So yeah, he can't wait for the end to come, tries to rape her at knife point, and we immediately get, oh, so that's why the train stopped, and we get the actual message that was sent over the radio. So it's a great little, because it's creepy when we can't hear it, and then we hear, like when you can't quite hear it, it also feels like maybe like almost like there's no natural source for that radio. But then when we just see the guy, he's standing there, he's like, another one of these, I guess. Okay, look, it's gonna be a couple of minutes before we, don't worry about it. We're working on it, and so the yeah, like the we're still suitably creeped out by the rape attempt, but the yeah, it's a what's it called? The like again the movie kind of what's the word? Excuse me, I just gotta write something down before I get it. There. The movie is telling us there will be explanations for these things, which makes, you know, that kind of prepare, that means that we're now sitting there waiting for, there's going to be an explanation for the hallucinations. And we, you know, technically have gotten the explanation, we just don't realize it consciously yet. Again, subconsciously, your mind has made the link because we see it's some sort of religious thing. She takes a bite of one of the muffins and very quick, very soon after starts having hallucinations, which she keeps having throughout the rest of the movie, but she didn't before. She had a nightmare before it, but she didn't have any hallucinations while awake. Now, and Sarah suddenly gets very sexually aggressive. I appreciate that the characters do acknowledge that, because clearly it's not supposed to be some sort of inexplicable thing. It is clearly going along with, you know, supposedly the world would end soon. That people are being affected in, things are like, what's the word? Like it's yeah, what is the, like, you know, yeah, some of these people are behaving in ways that they wouldn't normally. And again, like, even if you believe that the hallucinations are because of the muffins, there might still be something going on that is, you know, some sort, because the you know, at the same time, some of these psychiatric patients were also being more like unusually difficult. You know, it's not the first time these people have had like hallucinations and such, but suddenly all of them are having it at the same time. And the, you know, that guy working at the, you know, one of Karen's coworkers says, what was it? There's a full moon and there was something else, but I don't remember exactly. And yeah, the which actually might be why the you know, the guy in charge, the Hope, the guy in charge, yeah, who gives sermons, maybe that's why he thinks the world is ending. You know, he's picking up that something is going on, and that's what he thinks it is. And I think, I guess having intuition is simply not a job requirement for people working in, excuse me, in this subway train. Holy crap! The guy who comes in, how could he not tell that Julie is being threatened? Like, she's clearly extremely anxious. She's crying. You know, the clearly the you know, Patrick is threatening her. You know, the yeah. No trouble until we get to the end of the line. Don't you get it? The end of the line? I mean, I think when you come up with that clever of a title, I think you're entitled to have one of your characters brag about how clever of a pun it is, because it really is. Like, end of the line because Subway, and end of the line because the end of the world. Yeah. I appreciate we don't get the answer as to why Betty starts stabbing Mike right away, but it also doesn't take forever, and we do see that some of them are uncomfortable. You know, the three guys, the one in the middle doesn't want to do it, says there must be some mistake. He acknowledges that they got the message, all of them got the message, but he's like, there's something wrong though. This doesn't, you know, and I think the there was some other, again, you know, the movie is telling us there are explanations for these. It sets up mysteries and then provides the answer. And the thing that we don't, you know, for like, basically, if you, again, there's, it's one reading of the movie that it's hallucinogenics and such. You can choose to read the movie as it all being real, in which case you don't get a non-supernatural explanation for the seeming supernatural events, you know. And I guess I can understand if some people were frustrated by that after getting in, you know, there's an explanation as to why the train comes to a sudden stop. There's an explanation as to why all the cult members are, you know, and that is a clever, because at first we don't even realize that Betty is a member because she doesn't dress like the others do. And we, you know, we do see that male members tend to dress in this sort of, I like that it sort of invokes Mormon kind of, but it's clearly not supposed to be. You know, I've never seen a Mormon who wore, I don't know, is, I guess tan is the color. You know, normally they wear completely white, but it is a very similar type of dress. So it in, invokes that image without pretending that it is, you know. So yeah, but she wears normal clothes, and so does Sarah. So it seems like the female cult members simply don't wear I actually don't know if female Mormons wear. Do do female Mormons not go door to door? I don't actually know. I don't think I've ever, you know, had one go door to door here. I really appreciate that the first woman Patrick goes after is Karen, who is not sexualized. So when we see him go after Julie, it's definitely not that the movie is implying that, like, oh, she's asking for it and that's why this guy is targeting her. No, he sees a woman, he wants to rape her. It doesn't actually matter if she's sexualizing herself or not. I guess you could say he's more aggressive with Julie than he was with Karen, but that still doesn't, you know, the and that's maybe also because he was just prevented from going after Karen. Now, let's see. Yeah, and actually, I mean, Julie doesn't really move. She basically just she thinks that he's gonna stop, you know. So, and Karen actually walks away from the, you know. So yeah, I really appreciate that. The sword is ridiculous and awesome, but what exactly was he hiding that thing as? Like, the other ones are crosses, and if you walk around wearing, you know, actually, yeah, and they had them in like Betty has it in her purse, and I think some of the others maybe also had it in like a bag or something that they were carrying rather than going around with it. I mean, was he pretending it was like a cane or something? Because it has like I don't know. Anyway, it's still really cool. And Julie, you know, gets into another car and she sees, you know, all the stabby cultists, and it's like, oh great, I went from what's that thing called, the from the ashes into the fire, or something. And Neil, you know, I quite like, you know, he like he drops his water bottle and it rolls a few, so he gets up, so his back is to the camera and to the cultists, and they all grab their pagers. We immediately know what's happening, and so we see them get out the blades and such, while, you know, before like if he was looking at them, he'd be like, what's going on, you know. But yeah, that's a great, and you know, he manages to, and that also, it helps put some physical distance between them, because again, they don't look like killers before they start killing people. So why would you go out of your way to sit very far away from them? You know, that's not, you know, that's not necessary. So yeah, the let's see. So he, you know, he realizes right away that this is, you know, so he has a chance to, he runs over, grabs the axe, asks, messed that up. I guess I should move on. But anyway, yeah, he's like, what the, you know, and runs off. I don't know why he didn't stay around for the answer. You asked them a question. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Now, let's see. And you know, he realizes as quickly as the audience does, this is dangerous, since at this point the audience understands these are kill. You know, when if they're wearing that tan, you know, those clothes, and they're looking at their pager, that means they're going to start killing people. It, you know, you've already built up to the reveal. You've had the you know, really creepy reveal. At this point, you know, and I've seen movies that don't understand this, that keep trying, that keep thinking that it's going to be that you should play it the same way each time you do this same reveal, and it's just, it's not going to keep working. It's the exact right way to have him, like, you know, they look at their pager, they grab the knives, he notices and runs off, gets the axe, gets off the train, you know, because that's like, that's what we want him to do. You know, it doesn't make sense for him to not grab a weapon, to stay around, or even to attack just then, because they are outnumbering him. You know, it's not like he has a gun or something. That would make a different situation. But yeah, he grabs the axe and runs out. That's the smart thing to do. and it's like from right away we like this guy because it's like, okay, he gets it, you know, and yeah. So, let's see, yeah, and one of them asks the others to stab him, and right after, you know, the guy who does stab him says he was possessed. So the idea must be that if he hadn't stabbed him, he would have had one of the demons climb out of him right there, or maybe become a demon or something. And one of them says, I think they're gone. I really appreciate that he doesn't immediately open the door. So many stupid horror movie characters would. I think this movie does a quite good job, excuse me, of making sure the you know, these characters are largely not frustrating in what they do. You know, they, yeah. Now, let's see. Yeah, Mike himself points out his cribometer did not work on Betty, and Karen nurses him. He's been patient up to this point. It's got to be at least a couple minutes since he was stabbed. Yeah. And every channel just shows the red water and bubbles. This was what Karen, you know, was in at the very end of her nightmare, right before she woke up. Really, really great. Sort of like you're not quite clear what it is you're watching, but it is like, I mean, I guess it's supposed to be a sort of purgatory or some kind of like, she didn't drown and then wake up from the nightmare. She was in the water and then she woke up. So maybe you're supposed to be in, you know, if you, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, one of them wants to leave, and you know, I want to say his name is John, points out they're probably faking being gone so they can attack. And Sarah tells John they are coming back. And, you know, we saw that she got the pager message, and you know, yeah, we have to wonder if she's, you know, is she just waiting for an opportunity to attack? And we do see, you know, she does free Patrick, excuse me, which also really does not go well. And they get out some stuff to use as weapons. I appreciate that this is all tools and such. Makes sense that they would be there. They don't have something that would be completely ridiculous to be in there. You know, this is like a maintenance station, and what they get are like hammers, crowbars, and such. You know, and some flashlights. This is what they would actually have in the, you know, hypothetically, let's say that there's some, yeah, something malfunctioned and they need like, yeah, they might need a hammer or a crowbar and some flashlights. You know, yeah. Again, they're really, they tend to behave as smart people rather than stupid horror movie characters. Now, I think it's very clear that Maurice Devereaux, he has watched a lot of horror movies, and he understands what works, he understands what's frustrating to watch, and he really, you can really tell, he put a lot of effort into making this as good as he could possibly make it. I really hope, honestly, if he manages to put the movie in theaters, I would probably watch it in theaters, but I guess at this point, you know, this is from, again, 2007 and 2008, and wait, sorry, 2006, 2007, sorry, I'm thinking of Dread, which I'll be reviewing, I don't know, a month from now, I don't remember. Yeah, he hasn't made a movie since this, so, yeah, I guess it's maybe not very likely that he will, excuse me. Now, I hope he's doing well. I hope that whatever he's doing to keep the lights on is, you know, something he's enjoying. And right up until they opened the door. We really were not sure if the cultists were waiting right outside. Yeah, I appreciate they arm themselves so in the movie. Again, the writer clearly does not want these to be frustrating horror movie characters who make really stupid decisions, seem to have no self-preservation instinct. Maybe we shouldn't be talking, okay? These tunnels carry sound. She's not just in there to be attractive. That was a really great point that she made there. You want to explain why that pager is going off in your locker? Be frank with me. And the kid charges at them, and John hits him in the head with a crowbar, and he dies asking for his mother. And the ethical issue is brought up. Would you kill? I mean, I'm thinking teenager. I don't think he's. Yeah. Anyway, teenager, child, whatever. To save your own life, to save your girlfriend's life, to save your friends' lives, you know. And we find out that the pager message is do your duty, and everyone understood what that was about. I really appreciate that the cult has members that, you know, they there are some of them that don't completely believe, but they don't question it that much before things get extreme. That's very realistic. And you know, technically Frank, I mean, he's kind of sort of in the cult, but he really doesn't seem like, yeah, at the he dies still unwilling to do acts of violence in order. I mean, did he intentionally leave the door unlocked? If he did, there certainly wasn't any, like, it's not like Betty thanked him for not locking the door after he came back into the control room. And yeah, the you know Davis, I want to say, with the crowbar forces him to leave because he doesn't trust him since he's a member of the cult. I really like that the having a cult member in there with other, you know, with survivors, that really is a great way to approach, because it really, yeah, the paranoia. And you know, so some have said this is somewhat similar to like a zombie movie, and there's definitely some resemblance to that, absolutely. And this is like if it turns out someone was bitten, you know, and hid it from the others, because really, I mean, technically the right thing to do for Frank would have been to say, I'm actually a member of this cult. I'm sorry. I'm gonna leave. You know, I don't want you to be scared. And Karen thought she saw some cultists, but the others don't see them, which again is a strong hint. This is about the muffins, because there's no real indication that any of the others have had any of the muffins. And the other kid came back and manages to stab John, and Karen has to leave the kid behind. Another ethical issue, whether or not to give medical treatment to your, you know, yeah, to people who are attacking you. I like that, you know, Davis is trying to get the radio to work, and we see the TV in the background, and it's, you know, still just showing this red bubble water. I mean, specifically the fact that we see bubbles. It's not just red water or whatever liquid it looks like water, because it's very, it's what's it called? Like, I'm saying water as opposed to, for example, oil. You know, it's not viscous. It's very, very, yeah. And the, let's see, yeah. So that's let me think. What was the right? The fact that there are bubbles tells me that there's some living thing, you know, under what the camera is showing, that's trying to breathe. You know, that's what makes it so. It's they it could have just been red water. You know, it could have. I guess, no, I don't think it's supposed to look like blood, because it doesn't quite look like blood. Yeah, anyway, it could have just been water and nothing, red water and nothing else. But no, there are bubbles, and there are consistently bubbles, which, yeah, kind of suggests that, because at the end of the nightmare, for a while she's swimming in, or not swimming, she's in the red water. I'm almost certain that, at least after she's in view of the camera for a few seconds, she like sinks out of view and the bubbles keep coming. There were bubbles before from her trying to breathe underwater. So yeah, the reason there are all those bubbles, there's some people, I'm going to call it purgatory. There are some people in purgatory, and I mean, maybe they're drowning, but maybe they'll never fully drown. Maybe they'll just keep staying frozen in that horrifying situation. No matter what they do, they can't, like, maybe the top of the water, there's like a wall right above, so they can't, even if they swam to the top, they can't, but they're never gonna complete, because it's purgatory. It doesn't have to abide by the rules of, physical reality. Yeah, somehow they'll never fully drown. They'll just keep experiencing the horrifying fear of drowning. The yeah, it's I want to say Michael Caine gives a good brief description of it in The Prestige. So I'm not gonna try to, excuse me. I can't make it sound scarier than Christopher Nolan can. That sounded a little like a backhanded compliment. I mean that as praise. Sorry. Let's see. And they find Patrick and tie him to a chair, because he's carving up this like fellow cultist. He cut one of the hands off, and just, yikes. And just the fanaticism in his eyes as he looks at the wounded John, just, yeah. Axeman, sorry, Neil. Yeah, for a while I couldn't quite remember what he was called, so I just, yeah, I called him Axeman in the notes. Neil threatens Patrick that he'll let Julie at him if he says anything that isn't an answer to a question. And then he starts laughing. I mean, is that technically allowed? It's not saying something. I am so glad you're on our side. I really appreciate that her trauma is not just there for the movie to be more salacious. Other characters acknowledge that she was sexually assaulted and try to comfort her, which is very rare in horror movies. And, I joked about how the guy working the subway train has no intuition. Sadly, a lot of times when people are very clearly being sexually assaulted or otherwise abused, some people really don't realize that's what's happening, or don't really empathize with them. And Frank sees a demon. We've already been told he's been eating the muffins. So yeah, the first time we see a demon is around 52 minutes, I guess 51 minutes into a 90-minute movie. Yeah, 88 if you don't count the end credits. So there's not too much of the movie that has the demons in it, so the movie ends before we have a chance to get used to the idea of thinking it's ridiculous to be seeing them. It's one thing to hear people talk about them, excuse me. And I actually, that's one thing with the trailer, and obviously this is a thing with some trailers, but in the trailer, a lot of the shots of the demons are actually in there, and it's one of those, like, usually I say watch the trailer, but this and a number of other horror movies you really shouldn't. Dread is another case. They're scary trailers, but they also give way too much away. And yeah, with the, They show a lot of the demons in the trailer, and considering the like the length of the trailer and the length of the movie, they're like percentage wise, they're in way more of the trailer than in the actual movie, you know. And of course, I mean, the trailer's like just under 2 minutes, so of course that's something you can do. But yeah, it is like if you watch the trailer, you might think the demons are all over, and I think that was also a criticism I saw in some reviews. And we hear the sermon, and he really does sound a lot like one of the crazy right-wing priests. And right after the sermon, the power cuts. And what do you mean they cut the power? And Mike says the images on TV were special effects, they were fake somehow. He is a character who makes a lot of sense in a lot of the movie, so maybe we are supposed to think that he's right about this, that, you know, an again, a rational explanation, and it's not as bad as it looks. Maybe he is wrong in this case. And John won't be able to leave because it will worsen his wound and he might die. I really appreciate that not only is the female main character a nurse, but she actually helps out with her craft a lot, showing that stereotypically feminine traits and trades are incredibly useful in life or death situations, which, let's see, what does that say? Oh, and in fiction, especially horror and action, usually, you know, usually it's made out to be that you have to be hyper masculine to survive this kind of situation, and certainly that also helps a lot in this movie. But once the attacks, you know, after the excuse me, once they are no longer in a situation where they could be immediately attacked, it's like we may have, you know, yeah, she saves lives. She's, I mean, ultimately by the end of the movie, basically, I guess everyone except, let me think. I mean, Karen we see alive there at the very, very end. Did Mike die? We see him limping towards. Did he? Oh, did the kid kill him as a? I'm having trouble remembering. Yeah, I think he did, didn't he? He kills him, and yeah, yeah. You know, there at the end, I think it's only Karen who's alive, and then depending on how you interpret it, she dies right before the, you know, right as the credits start, or she is the only one who survives. But they would have died sooner if not. And some of them do things because they survived as long as they did, that otherwise they would all have died much sooner. And Mike points out the, you know, about hope of an afterlife, brings up the idea it could be a hallucination, and it's kind of played as a joke so that the audience doesn't think too much about it yet. But again, it is like, you know, he says, if you see that, it might be proof of an afterlife. Or maybe you just need to see a doctor because it's a hallucination, you know. So, yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, that is, yeah, those are the interpretations. When she closes her eyes and then opens them again, her slight smile, one interpretation is that she's no longer seeing them, it was hallucination. Another interpretation is they're still there, and she thinks to herself, this means there's an afterlife. Maybe there are more interpretations, but that's certainly two very prominent ones. And we see Frank and Davis attacked, or rather, yeah, the cultists charge into the room and go and grab them, or grab Davis at least. What do you want to do? Kill him? No, I guess not. Again, very realistic. A lot of fiction pretends that trauma immediately means you want to kill the person who hurt you. But for most people, it actually takes a lot before they are seriously willing to kill someone. I really appreciate that the decapitation is not entirely successful. A lot of horror movies, especially more recent ones, act like human flesh is ridiculously easy to penetrate, but in reality, it is actually very difficult to chop someone's head off, and certainly, like, it's maybe, yeah, as far as I understand, especially with the sword. An axe has a bit more weight to it, but a sword is really not, like, yeah, and yeah, I really appreciate that. And they tell Frank to kill his wife, and she describes hallucinating as well. I really appreciate how frequently hallucination comes up in the movie. If you believe that the muffins contain hallucinogenics, it, yeah, that's the explanation, because clearly the believers do, the cultists do, partake in the muffins. And yeah, I don't think I completely realized that the very first time, like, the very first time I watched it, I didn't sit and count. I didn't do that this time, but off the top of my head, I would say overall, from the very start to the very end, there's somewhere between half a dozen to a full dozen. Not all of them are hallucinations that the audience sees. Some of them are people saying that they're hallucinating, or that they knew someone who was hallucinating, but it keeps coming up. This is not, like, if there was almost no mention of it, then it would be very difficult to, like, as it is, because there are so many, half to a full dozen mentions and instances of hallucination, like, the that's telling the audience this is important. If that's like, yeah, if a piece of fiction wants you to think hard about something specific, it will keep bringing it up, or bring it up in very different contexts, for example. Not necessarily a lot of times, but several times, but in very different contexts. That means you're supposed to think about that specific thing and think about the contexts. And Frank won't stab his wife, so she stabs him, and then she is stabbed completely willingly by the cultists. And the baby is placed, like, on top of their dead bodies. It's just, yeah. And Patrick points out to Sarah the muffins are addictive, which, I mean, that really does explain, like, if they are constantly seeing demons, and they're told that, these demons will torment people if they don't kill the people, of course they'd be so willing to kill, and so, what's it called, willing to kill, and relieved when they get the pager message, because nearly all of them are very happy to get it. And yeah, it's extremely creepy, but it is, again, to the people who said that, it paints religious people in a really bad light, I really don't think, I'm almost 100% certain it's about cult, not religion, and there is a huge difference. Again, some people brought up I want to say, what's it called, Jonestown, and yeah, it's, that's the kind of group that this, if Jonestown didn't tell them to commit suicide but told them to go out and kill, this movie is what that would look like. And yeah, if they don't, what's the word, technically the movie never directly says all of the cult members are eating a lot of these muffins, but the muffins are connected to the cult, and you can buy them at the psychiatric hospital, for example, and the cultists clearly partake in them. Frank does, Sarah does, Patrick talks about them, and like, when Patrick says they're addictive, aren't they? Sarah isn't like, what are you talking about? This is the first time I've had one. In other words, yeah, I mean, she's agreeing with her silence. You know, she's not like she seems upset that he knows something about her, basically. You know, he knows that he's right about this, and she doesn't like that because he's so, yeah, such a horrible person. So, in other words, the cultists eat a lot of these, it makes them see demons, and the Reverend tells them the demons are going to torment these people if they are not saved, and you can save them, and all you have to do is kill them. They're gonna go to heaven anyway. And that I do think that there is some criticism of the idea of heaven. And I do, again, I'm not saying that it's all religious people, but there are some religious people. There is a certain percent, and maybe it's a very percentage, maybe it's a very low percentage, but there are some of them who, for example, commit suicide thinking they're going to go to heaven, or kill others thinking that's a good thing, you know. And I'm sorry, but if people don't believe that there's a heaven, then they're not going to be so willing to commit suicide, and they're not going to, you know, they're not going to think that killing someone is going to make the person they're killing happier. And Patrick tries to convince Sarah to untie him, and she briefly hallucinates just, you know, minutes after eating some of the muffin, again, subtly connecting the two in the audience's mind, and she hallucinates this, you know, sort of melty mouth, not quite demon, but yeah, version of John, and, you know, the hallucination ends just soon enough that it doesn't start to become too familiar to the audience. You know, the moment that you have something like that, you have to be careful that it doesn't just become the new normal. You know, if you have an entire movie where every line is dubbed, then after a while the audience just gets used to it. And if you, in your movie, just show, like, I would argue that in some of the later Nightmare on Elm Street movies, we've just become too used to seeing and hearing Freddy Krueger, and he's no longer actually scary. We're just used to him, you know, and that's one of the things, one of the strengths in A New Nightmare. I'm not saying that the movie's perfect. I certainly understand the criticisms of it, but it did try to make Freddy scary again, and to an extent, I think it succeeded. And I really think, yeah, it's a problem in some of the last of the sequels. You know, maybe not the first couple, but like maybe by yeah, I would say the sixth movie. I'm not sure he's that scary anymore. We've seen him so much, we've heard him crack so many jokes, and one of the things is also that he will appear in movies for a while before doing something very scary, and that's something that this movie, like, we only the only times we see the demons, they're scary. The only time, like, almost every single, yeah, actually, I think every single time that we see at least one cultist, obviously not at the very start, but once we realize that they're dangerous, then every time we see at least one cultist, it's not always the cultist who does the violence. There's that one bit where the kid runs up and John hits him. But every time we see a cultist, there's some violence. Every time. You know, Patrick, we see for a while without violence. But that's the, you know, and Sarah. But those are the only two exceptions. And it's not like Patrick isn't still being scary and creepy, you know. And with Sarah, yeah, there is this sense, is she at some point gonna turn? And she almost, you know, she does end up untying him. And let's see, yeah, and John yells that Patrick is trying to, what does that say? Yeah, trying to get free, and Sarah comes out. Yeah, and Patrick kills John, and Patrick tries to rape Sarah, and then when you know, yeah, when Betty and the other cultists come in, he says, "Oh, she bewitched me," and suddenly, for one thing, it starts as just Patrick, you're not supposed to rape people, but then when they hear that Sarah supposedly bewitched him, which again, clearly the movie does not believe that. Clearly the movie is criticizing this. Then they actually kill her as punishment for that. So the idea that he might be raping people, that's that's bad, but the idea that she might be luring men to have sex with her, that's horrible. That's death penalty right there. That is, there's almost no time in the movie where cultists kill other cultists. It's almost always that they're killing people who are not part of the cult. Now, let's see. The only times is when someone is said to be they kill Frank because they think his faith is too weak. They kill Frank's wife and that other guy because they were saying they were hallucinating, they were being possessed by the devil and such, or the demons. But Sarah, it's clearly to punish her. The cultists also don't have so much screen time that the audience becomes used to seeing them. They remain scary throughout. Again, I didn't sit down and count, but if you did, if someone wanted to, like, yeah, if you've seen this a million times and you kind of want to watch it again, but you feel like it's not really going to be scary anymore or something, try to notice, again, at the very start, maybe there are some minutes passed between, but at the time it hasn't been revealed yet. From once it's revealed that the cultists attack people, from that point on, try to notice, if we ever see cultists on screen for, like, I would say I don't think we see them on screen for more than a few minutes at a time without them attacking survivors or survivors attacking them in self-defense. And again, yeah, so technically it's not always the cultists managing to attack, but there's always violence, and the violence is always as a direct result of the cultists, trying to kill people. So to the audience, like, hypothetically, before this, maybe some of these people have been cult members for years without harming a fly. But to the audience, every time we see them, it means they're trying to kill someone. Again, once it's been revealed that they're trying to kill people, once they get the pager message, post pager message, every time we see them, they're trying to kill people, and they almost always they don't always succeed, but it always leads to violence. Sometimes they're the ones that face the violence, but it's in self-defense. So when you see them in this movie, you become conditioned to thinking of them as bringers of violence, because we see the survivors for long stretches of time. Like, hypothetically, like Karen, for example, she's in almost the whole movie. Like, there's not a lot of screen time where she isn't there at all. There's a few minutes from when the train stops and until we see her again. There's a few minutes there, and let's see. Yeah, when we see John, Sarah, and Patrick and the other cultists come in, there's maybe a few minutes there, but she's in most of the movie, and when there aren't cultists around, she's not engaged in any violence, nor the other survivors are. Like, the closest they come is Julie punching and spitting Patrick. other than that, yeah, there's then there are the occasional hallucinations, which again are related to the cult because of the hallucinogenic. So yeah, the cult leads to violence to the audience. In the audience's eyes, the cult always leads to violence. Violence and hallucinations. Some really brutal kills in the tunnel. Two people get a hammer in the face, and that one, I want to say it's the sword guy. That's an appropriately, like, he obviously he needs an epic death. He's walking around with a sword. He almost decapitates Davis. He gives it his best shot. He needs to die in an epic way, and an axe to the I mean, the axe, like, the axe gets halfway buried, excuse me, in his face, like, straight up. The his skull is like 30% axe at this point. I really appreciate that every so often one of the good guys will get injured. I've seen horror movies where an extremely long time passes without very many good guys getting injured. It just, you don't have to have it, but it really raises the stakes. Excuse me. Julie and Karen refuse to leave Mike, and Neil promises to send help as soon as he can. And that's another thing. These are such likable characters. I don't think there's a single. No, no, there is not. Of all the survivors, every single one of them is likable. They're not all equally likable, but you get a little bit of definition to them. And you like them. Clearly they might make mistakes, but they are they're not like bad people, and they're not like, what's the word? It's yeah, and the cultists themselves, a lot of them don't have a lot of personality, but again, they are mostly there to be scary. That is the primary. Yeah. And Mike and Karen kiss, and she runs, and Mike barely misses being finished off by the guy who's going around stabbing the, yeah. And we see some posters of the Reverend. I mean, ultimately, we don't actually see his moving image or hear him talk for very much of the movie, but he is still always present. They did a really good job of that. And it is this thing, like, there you know there are some religious groups who believe very extreme things, and a lot of people who don't believe the way they do just don't really. It's like, live and let live, whatever. They're not. What's the word? Like, what's the word? There's room for everyone, kind of thing. We don't go around thinking that we have to do something to them. So yeah, I will agree with the people who say, if it's like this fringe cult, then how can they be, how can there be so many members, and how can they take over lines of communication and all this stuff? Now, I appreciate that after all that happened in this movie, the ending here does, in part, come down to Karen and Patrick, one of the first conflicts the movie set up. And, yeah, actually, at the start of the movie, Mike is why Patrick doesn't keep pursuing it. Karen, sorry. Almost called her Kate. And there at the end, Mike isn't there anymore. So immediately the audience, again, we think, what's going to happen now? Is she going to be able to? Because she's not. You know, what was the first thing we saw her do once she was awake? She has to give a shot to this old guy, And what does she do? She asks for a big strong guy to come in and help her restrain him. There's no big strong guy there to help her anymore, and most of what we've seen her do is, she's tried to talk people down. She's like helped, what's it called, tourniquets, yeah, on stab wounds and like all this stuff. We haven't seen her like, what's it called, do a what's it called? Yeah, she hasn't like fought anyone in a really formidable way up to this point. And I will get more into the, let's see, yeah, but I'll get to a few other things. Yeah, when we get to what she does in the chronological order, I'll talk more about it. And we see Neil get to the exit, but there's chaos outside, and he and the audience now fully believe the Reverend was right. It is Armageddon. Or at the very least, it's impossible for Neil to get out safely. If he runs out there, I don't know exactly how many, but we see at least several cult members out there. So, yeah. And Betty kills Neil in another jump scare. It has been a while, at least since there were very many of them. And the cultists get another message on the pager and now give each other poison pills. So really, if Neil had managed to get out, maybe he would have been able to stay alive until they started giving each other poison pills. I gotta say, Patrick gives a very memorable performance. I'd like to see him in other stuff. I don't think I have. I honestly forgot how little we actually do see of the demons. We get this extremely brief glimpse about 51 minutes in. And let's see. And yeah, and here at the very end, we see, here at the very end, if I had to guess, again, I didn't count, from when we see the first of them at the very end until the end credits start, maybe 1 minute. I don't think it's more than that. It certainly isn't much more than 1 minute. And yeah, because of it's so close to the end and there's so little of it, there's very little chance that the audience is just gonna give up on the movie. Because that's extremely important. After you've watched the entire movie, if you then later like, I don't know, I didn't, when I'm thinking about it, maybe it's not as, but you really don't want your audience to stop caring about your movie before the movie is over. That is I mean, unless it's not, some movies don't care about that. Some filmmakers don't care about that. But if you're trying to make a movie that's supposed to be enjoyable to watch, like I'm sure like art films, don't feel the need to, at least not to people who don't love art films. But yeah, for that, it is like, yeah, the what's it called? The yeah, let me think. Uh, yeah, for mainstream movies, for movies that are meant to be entertaining, you really don't want to lose the audience before the movie is over. And then, if it happens afterwards, that's not, there's only so much you can do at that point. But during the movie itself, yeah. And let's see. But yeah, I mean, here at the end of the at the very end of the movie, we do see the demons, and we see them for several seconds. You know, and some of them are crawling on the ceiling upside down and this stuff. These are the kinds of things where if you know, I some people maybe did get pulled out of it. For some people, it is maybe going too far. You know, to me, it wasn't. Especially, the first viewing, I didn't love it quite as much, but the yeah, on the second viewing and here on the third viewing, I really loved it, and I think they do a great job. The performers in the suits and the makeup on, some of the body language is really strong. Like yeah, they move in human ways. And let's see. Yeah, and we see Mike trying to get to Karen, and Betty is scared that no one can give her a pill, and Patrick kills her, stabs her, and Karen applies her nurse training again, trying to talk Patrick out of it, attributing his behavior to stress. And again, it is this thing of, will that be enough? It has come to the like, so far, a lot of the time her nurse training has really helped the situation, but she hasn't been able to talk a cultist down. She tried with Betty, and now she's trying with Patrick. And was there maybe one more time? I forget, but yeah. And I know I said it in the old video, but man, it's so satisfying to see Karen bite Patrick's lower lip off and stab him in the neck after everything, after all the pain he's caused. But yeah, at the very end, she is still, she does defend herself when it comes to the, yeah. Now, yeah, and Patrick only just now gave her the scar on her shoulder that we saw she had at the very start. So one interpretation is that that scene takes place after everything else in the movie. Maybe it wasn't actually Armageddon. Let's see, maybe she wasn't crying because of the nightmare, because of the trauma of the awful experience. Very effective terror when the lights cut out for Julie, even her own flashlight, the battery, and it blinks and blinks, and she's, oh, come on, and then it's just completely dark, very, and actually, I quite like that that's the very last, we don't know what happens to her at that point. It's, yeah. And the cultist boys, what was that say? Yeah, and yeah, the cultist boy is going to stab Mike, but he sees something behind Mike, and and he runs away, and Mike turns and sees it, but the audience doesn't see it, at least yet. And once once we see the demons go towards Karen, it's heavily suggested that that's what was behind Mike, and presumably they killed Mike. Again, that is, yeah, that's the thing. If if it's hallucination, then the boy saw it, and maybe Mike didn't actually see anything, because as far, we didn't see him take in any of the muffins, but let's see. Yeah, obviously, if that's how you read it, then he didn't actually see something. And Betty's body suddenly jolts, and the demons appear, and one of them climbs out of Betty, and yeah, we see they have the melting faces that some humans did. So when we saw the melting faces, it was a prologue to the demons, and great effects on the demons. So yeah, we very briefly saw the demon design in the drawing that we see at the very start of the movie. Apparently by the, what's that? By the suicide, sorry about that, by the suicidal patient, but that turns out to be a nightmare. But that was only a drawing. We don't see the design until 52 minutes in, and it was only brief, and then maybe the last 2 minutes or something. Excuse me. I know I said in the old video, but I really love that. The let's see. We see the demons move very close to Karen. We see them sort of groping at her face, but then like yeah, is it that it's like, I guess it's that the hands move out of frame, and then we don't see them for like a few seconds, and all we're seeing is Karen's face. You know, it's this close up. First they move towards her, but then we don't see them. Still on close up of her face. Her eyes are closed because she's scared. That's what you do, you know. And then she opens her eyes, and there's this slight smile, and it just ends. And we don't know if that means that they're gone, or she considers it proof of the afterlife, or what. And just, I absolutely love it. I don't think any. I think it's the perfect ending to the movie. You know, I'm not saying everything about the movie is perfect, but it's the perfect way to end the movie. And I also really love the opening. You know, yeah, I think the opening and ending, the book ending of this thing of hallucinations, of her seeing something that isn't really there, and a sense of relief when she realizes it's not really there. You know, yeah, and yeah, and as the credits roll, we hear a performance of the song that the cultists sing, which is also, it really allows us to take in all the lyrics, since now there's, you know, there's no visuals to take in unless you're paying close attention to the credits, of course. But yeah, you know, and at first it's a solo performance, but then a few more voices join in. First one, and then more after that. So yeah, the movie's 88 minutes long without end credits, 91 minutes long with them. I think that's the right length. I don't think it should have been longer. Let's see. It really, it does not overstay its welcome. And you know, it brings up the points. It has exciting events, and then it knows to not overstay its welcome. So, notes taken before watching. So, Maurice Devereaux directed, edited, wrote, produced this movie and Lady of the, sorry, yeah, what does it say? Blood Simple, Lady of the Lake, and Slashers. And Slashers was direct to video, but these other three, Lady of the Lake, Blood Simple, and this, did get theatrical releases. And like I said, I haven't watched those. Maybe I will. I haven't found copies of them, but I am interested in seeing more. Although, as far as I can tell, this is the very best thing he's made, the most, you know, the one that came out the best, and such. But yeah, the let's see. And apparently, the guy who plays Davis is also in Dark Phoenix as the Army Ranger Captain. Is he the one who talks to Magneto? Maybe. And I mean, so that's like what, 12 years after this movie? Yeah, I think I can kind of see that. And he's got the helmet thing on, so yeah. And he plays Archon in Immortals. I do not remember. I remember some of that movie, but not that part. So yeah, like I said earlier, he hasn't made a movie since this one, but I enjoyed this movie so much. If he puts a movie in theaters that comes to a theater near me, I will go and watch it in theaters. So let's see. Yeah, I find that the time displacement around the middle first. Yeah, so, yeah, I wrote middle. I had forgotten how early it was, but yeah, the first very early portion of the film is very effective. It had the potential to be frustrating. We keep seeing scenes start and then we go away from there, and then the next thing we see is further back in time. But they really made it work. It really builds the tension and suspense incredibly well. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we do see. Let's see. Is it that I guess it doesn't actually jump in time more than once. It's just that once it's jumped back in time, then it jumps to a bunch of new locations before jumping back to the location we saw before the time jump. But yeah, it could have gotten confusing, and it didn't. It was instead very very effective. I the you know, excuse me, like hypothetically there's a fan edit of this, excuse me, that puts it in chronological order. Excuse me, like I know I've heard at least people have done for Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. I'm sure that's very useful for if you're having trouble, you know, putting together when what is happening. But I sincerely doubt it's as effective. Maybe it was in part a decision based on budget, but I really love the small scope of the film. The fact we only get glimpses into the global effects of the murdering religious fanatics and what seems like the end times. I've seen movies that try to show the entire world falling apart, and I don't find them to be as effective as this. And I'll grant that I haven't watched all of them. Maybe there are some that are great. The limited scope also allows us, excuse me, for us to keep guessing if it really is happening all over the world until the end of the movie. And even then, you can ultimately make the decision yourself. Is it the apocalypse, or is it just the tainted muffins that is making people see demons? Now, I misremembered as that somewhere in the old vlogs, I say that us seeing the footage of chaos on the TVs could just be playback from earlier catastrophes. You know, like, at the end of the day, the only thing we get is that it says live on the, you know, that doesn't actually mean it's live. You know, you can put that on, like, if I wanted to, I could put live on the, you know, the way I put, you know, I put spoilers up at the top of the screen, you know. I could have had that say live instead. That wouldn't mean that it was actually live, but you know, I think that maybe they should have had newspapers or the like with the current date, which wouldn't be that difficult for the prop department to create. I feel like that would settle it, and although I guess maybe that's why it's not there, because anyway, you know, I mean, why would the cultists do that before things happen, and how could they know for sure what day they would start killing people? Also, and I guess, sorry, yeah, I guess, and I realize this would be cheesy, but maybe if there were some national monuments in some of these shots, like the Eiffel Tower, the Big Ben, to make it clear this is happening in different places all around the world. They do, they do definitely do some to try to make sure you believe that this is worldwide. You know, let's see, I think, yeah, some of the settings are very specific, but yeah, yeah, I guess the reason is maybe to make sure, because I've seen movies that had low budgets that still put the Eiffel Tower. You know, it could be a static image. You know, it could be in the background or something. You don't have to film it near the actual Eiffel Tower. Anyway, I would definitely say that the first 10 or 20 minutes are a different movie from the rest of the movie, but I love them both. Yeah, I think around that point, but, you know. Yeah, and I think I saw someone point out that the thing with the young woman, the former patient, Vivian, at the train station, seeing the Asian businessman with the, you know, like, what's it called, worms, because that is like, the rest of the time it's just melty mouths, isn't it? I think that might be the only, now when I think about it, I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, and then she jumps out in front of a train. That is very Asian horror of a thing. You know, suicide. A young woman commits suicide by jumping in front of a train, and you know, she sees something supernatural, and yeah. And I saw at least one person say, "Oh, it's like a tribute." You know, he wanted to pay tribute to that sort of thing, and I think I saw, yeah, some people said that they felt like it really didn't fit with the rest of the movie, and like I just said, yeah, it doesn't necessarily completely fit with the rest of the movie, but I do think that it is this thing of, what's the word, like, I don't mind it. I think it's great that, you know, he wanted to pay tribute to, yeah. Now, let's see. Yeah, so I've seen a lot of reviewers say this is a lot like a zombie movie, only with religious fanatics in place of zombies. That does make a lot of sense for how to classify this movie other than slasher. As much as I love George Romero's Trilogy of the Dead, overall, I think I enjoy this even better, although aspects of those movies are better made than some aspects of this. All in all, I probably love this as much as I love 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, and no, I will not be spoiling any of those movies in this video. And let's see. But yeah, for sure, like overall, Dawn of the Dead is a better movie than this. I would say overall, but and it's also, I think the thing that really matters, the thing that really makes this such an incredible experience for me is the comment on cults, the comments on the fact that you can interpret it, yeah, the fact that you can interpret this, is it a sort of mass psychosis thing, or it, yeah, and and the setting, I do find a subway scarier than the settings of the, but yeah, those are classics. If I let me think, did I end up deciding I was going to try to make some videos talking about those movies? I don't remember right now, I'm sorry. I'm not going to say either way, because I really do not remember. I know for a long time I figured that I shouldn't, because I haven't watched that many movies that are very similar to those. I've watched more recent zombie movies, but, you know, yeah. I know that there are other zombie, like there are like Italian zombie movies that are super gory. I haven't watched any of those, I don't think. So I don't know if I would be able to give a good enough comparison. Anyway, and yes, personally, I do prefer George Romero's cut of Dawn of the Dead to Dario Argento's cut. But with that said, I haven't watched very much Argento, but I want to say it's called Do You Like Hitchcock? That movie is great, if I recall. I remember that as being really great. I gotta say, I really love when horror directors really wear their influences on their sleeve. The he literally put Hitchcock's name in the title. Like when you and there are some of the thrillers made by, what's his name, Brian De Palma. It's like he really loves Hitchcock. He really loves Hitchcock. So much so that actually one of them he made really close to Hitchcock making the original, the one that he was kind of doing a tribute to, and Hitchcock like sued him or something. And watching those two movies, it's like there are a lot of similarities here, dude. So that maybe he should have waited a little bit longer before he made his. Yeah, I think they weren't. I'm not sure they were even that many years apart in when they were made, but anyway. So yeah, I don't think the message of this movie is supposed to be that Christians are crazy. This movie is not saying that Christianity itself is a cult. It's saying there are cults within Christianity that are crazy and dangerous. And that's just plain factually true. Some of the worst cults claim to believe in at least parts of Christianity. The Manson family, Jim Jones, the I think sometimes Christians get a bit defensive because there are a lot of people who claim to be Christian. Crap, I'm no true Scotsman. There are people who consider themselves to be Christians, who don't represent all Christians, whose values don't represent all Christians. And I do really think it sucks for real Christians, but sometimes Christians also end up getting really defensive because of that. Let's see. I know there are other like horror movies, horror thrillers that are about cultists. I'm not sure I've seen. I might have seen some of them. I couldn't really think of examples when I was, in the month up to me doing this video. Since the church's name is the Voice of Eternal Hope, I'll try to resist the temptation to refer to the cult as the Voice of Eternal Hope Wish House. Yeah, I already mentioned, but I'll say, and I love the dual meaning of the title. Excuse me. I think it was in the IMDb review section. There was one Christian who expressed frustration that the movie, at the movie, getting something wrong about Christian beliefs. I understand his frustration, and I'm not attacking him personally. I think the writing is based around what would make it easy to combine the idea of demons, which would be difficult to write out, especially considering the very ending, and that the writer-director wanted to have the cult be a Christian cult. And it's not as though no major Christian organizations have ever thought that killing groups of people would be a good thing. One of the Crusades had them send children, the logic being that since you sin as long as you live, children, having had shorter lives up to that point, would have had less time to sin, and thus would have an easier time getting into heaven. They sent children into war. It's that kind of warped thinking stemming from religious zealotry that this movie is evoking. It's not saying that your average churchgoer is going to go out and stab someone. Excuse me. Sorry. I know, not supposed to touch my face. I mostly don't, but that was really annoying me. Sorry. Yeah, it's. I don't think that it was. I forget the exact detail, but it was something like. It was something about the demons that, like, the demons would not be something. I'm sorry, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was in the IMDb reviews section. So, if you feel passionately about finding it, it's somewhere in there. But the let me think. A second. The Yeah, he wanted Maurice Devereaux wanted to comment on Christian cults, and he wanted demons to be part of the story, and yeah. So let's see. Yeah, I have a few notes on the trailer, and it's easy to find on YouTube. It's 1 minute and 58 seconds. Incredibly creepy. Showcases both the crazy people talking about demons invading, as well as the smiling, singing, creepy, killing cultists. Ultimately, it does give away that there are actual demons, although technically you could read it as them being imagined, but the trailer really doesn't make you think of it that way, but I can imagine that they felt they had to show the demons to properly sell it. And yeah, so let's see, I'm not sure I'm gonna have anything to comment on my old vlogs about this movie, but I'm just briefly gonna read through what I said in them so that I can see if I have something to comment on. So let's see. And hmm, yeah, I don't think I really have anything to. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I yeah, I pretty much said the hmm, yeah. I have read most of the notes. Okay, let me think. Yeah, I'm just gonna. There we go. And okay, let me think. Yeah, okay, so this was a YouTube video review as opposed to a YouTube text review. Geek Legion of Doom. 5 minute 48 seconds review of this. And something I quite like, they showed multiple different covers. There's some great designs, some of them don't show the demons. Now, okay, as far as I can tell, yeah, they said that the movie is too vague for its own good. I can see what they mean. I'm not entirely. I don't quite agree, but I can definitely see what they mean. And yeah, saying not all the acting is great. It's true, and discusses whether about the drug-laced muffins if it's too subtle, not enough. It was a lot better than I thought it would be, and okay. And what does that say? Right, and the let's see. Yeah, I the yeah, Maurice Devereaux made this this like joke PSA parody of like PSAs from the 50s called PMS survival tips, which it stands for prehistoric monster syndrome. And I don't know, let's see, I get a little bit of a misogynist vibe from it, which I really don't get from this movie, from End of the Line. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe it's supposed to be making fun of this kind of misogynist. It's definitely making fun of people who flip out over their significant other having PMS. But I feel like it plays into the tropes. I don't know. Anyway, it was well made. It's well made, definitely. And if it's your kind of thing, it is funny. And the scientist is played by Neil Napier, who's also in this movie as Neil. So clearly they like working together. And then there's this video. Right, right. And let's see. Hmm. I think the PMS thing is from 2006 or something. And there's a video where Maurice Devereaux, it's like an interview on French TV. So he speaks, he's French Canadian, and apparently they talk about how popular it is and how much it was shared by people, and it got 1,400,000 views on YouTube, and that is it for this section. So I'm gonna move on to the final section. And just waiting for the right second. Critic sites, IMDb and Wikipedia. Excuse me. So I am just briefly going to skim my old text review. So let's see. Yeah, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't even have a consensus because there's so few, and it's got a 49%. Oh wait, no, sorry. Yeah, the audience score is 49% with 1,504 user ratings, but yeah, it doesn't even have a full count, even though yeah, there's only one critic review up on Rotten Tomatoes. All the ingredients of a classic horror movie are here, but given a shake-up with a cleverly diabolical twist. Yeah, I'll put. And I guess. Right, yeah, and I found his. Yeah, I clicked on the full review link and copied in his full review. So let me just briefly skim to. Let's see. Oh, excuse me, I just gotta make sure. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. It has been 6 hours since I last took pain medication. And the pain is still there, so I am just really quickly going to. Did I not write it down? Let me think. That's it. I wrote it down here. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just take a few seconds to. There it is. Excuse me. There. As well. Finish off the water and. Right, so it is. I'm just gonna note when I took it in case in another 6 hours I still. There. So let's see. Actually, I think this might also. I'm not sure I can offhand think of another horror movie I've watched that uses the subway setting, but I'm sure there are others. And I think I read some, you know, oh, there are more sorry, critic reviews on, but only two apparently. Yeah. Let's see. And yeah, so I copied in, I think, 5 pages worth of Rotten Tomatoes user reviews. So let me see. And I am skimming to see if I can find something I especially want to comment on. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Raw Meat, aka Deathline, and Midnight Meat Train are the some of the others. Okay, so yeah, this is a user review on Rotten Tomatoes. And they believe that brutally murdering the unbeliever will save them. Could you conceive of a more nasty, bastardly version of God? But really, this isn't that far from the evils that religious people ascribe to God every day. Very true. And yeah, I mean, read the Old Testament. There's plenty of really, really awful. Yeah. Again, this is it's not it's not like the movie is saying that, like, let me think, what can I think of as a, yeah, it's not saying that one day the Pope is gonna stand, get on TV and say, if you're a Catholic you should kill everyone. But it is, you know yeah, the idea that, the those who do not believe the right way will, that it would be a good thing for them all to get brutally murdered. I want to say it's Jehovah's Witnesses that believe that Jesus will come back riding a horse with a blade, with a sword in his hand, and he's going to kill so many unbelievers that his horses, you know, what's it called, hooves, will be, you know, like there'll be a certain level of blood on the ground everywhere, so that everywhere his horse steps, it will step in blood. It's and plenty of people have encountered, and I'm not saying that they would themselves kill, but again, it's not a one-to-one. It's not, the movie isn't saying this is literally exactly how this sort of thing would happen. There are, of course, some horror movies that claim to be depictions of the real world with a complete, like, you can take, this is how it is. But I would say the vast majority of the ones I've seen are very clearly using some of reality and some of, like, ideas to say something that they think is interesting, without claiming that it's reality. Now, let's see. As the tense underground slaughter unfolds, several questions arise. Is this phenomenon global, or is it confined to underground railways? Are these people really crazy, or will their ritualistic murders lead to some sort of change? End of the Line leaves these questions hanging until the very end, and it builds a tense, brutal, and genuinely messed up tale along the way before revealing its true nature. A fun, original, and twisted piece of horror cinema, End of the Line will delight those looking for something that differs from mainstream garbage. I really wish that reviews like that, see, I don't ultimately know if he thinks that it is hallucination or that there really is, excuse me. Obviously, the way he wrote that, he wants you to be able to read that without it spoiling the movie, but I really wish that review sites would have like a place where you could put in just a brief spoiler about the movie where you give your interpretation of the ending or you say this was my favorite part or something so that when yeah because I but anyway, excellent review. Let's see. Excuse me. Okay, so this is something from, yeah, watching the making of and listening to the commentary. It's great what they achieved with such restrictions, and I really hope Devereaux makes a new film soon because he's very talented and acknowledges his mistakes. That is, yeah. Every if you, I'm of the opinion that when you make a movie or any kind of creative you know, ex, excuse me, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Expression, any kind of creative expression, it's impossible to get it perfect. And I know quite a few creative people who would agree with that. The important part is to do what you can to get as close to perfection as possible. And if whenever you look at something you've already made and you realize there's something you could have done better, you try to apply that the next time you make something. And this reviewer says it's a Clive Barker type story. That is true. Man, I knew there was a reason I hide from Jehovah's Witnesses. So let's see. Now let's see. And the movie isn't on Metacritic at all. And that brings us to IMDb. So, yeah, the tagline is "The end is coming." And let's see. And okay, so yeah, on IMDb it has a 5.9 out of 10. 4,460 IMDb users. So 19.4%. Okay, yeah. 12.2 gave it an 8. 19.4 gave it a 7. 21.7 gave it a 6. 13.9 gave it a 5. And that's pretty, yeah. I originally gave it a 7, but if I were doing it again today, I would probably give it an 8, or possibly even a 9. Now, so, oh, that's right, there's only one item on the trivia, but yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I'm just gonna read. During the dream at the beginning of the movie, Karen finds an envelope from Vivian with the phrase, okay, I'm gonna give it my best shot. Claviceps purpurea ergot. Claviceps purpurea is a type of ergot fungus that can grow in rye and has been known to cause hallucinations. An alternate read of the movie is that the demons aren't real and instead are just hallucinations due to tainted church muffins. The only people who are confirmed to see demons are church members, Betty Frankie, or people who are shown to have eaten the muffins, Karen. And there are 7 quotes. And let's see. Yeah, and there's only 2 connections on the, yeah. Just another beautiful day in the neighborhood. I forget who says that, but yeah, one of the characters says that, and that's a reference to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And yeah, Conan the Barbarian. Just because you're carrying an axe doesn't make you King Conan. The subtitles actually translated that as, I wouldn't let you through this door even if you were carrying an axe, which I guess is supposed to be a sarcastic remark. So, let's see, yeah. Huh. Okay, so Wikipedia, the plot synopsis, I'm just gonna read the first 2 lines. Karen, Ilona Elkin, a traumatized woman, has a horrific nightmare involving a subway train. The flashback narrative plot follows her trapped in a subway. So yeah, the person who wrote this is, yeah, picked up on the scar on the shoulder, and is completely, yeah, is he wrote they wrote that based on the reading that the rest of the movie is flashback. And Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna keep reading because yeah, the person or persons who wrote this, that yeah, you can tell what how they interpreted it. A Christian doomsday cult which has been consuming and distributing hallucinogen laced muffins that make people see visions of flashlight-eyed demons. Let's see. Oh, that was slightly awkwardly phrased there. Anyway, and yeah, this is not the most. This is an amusing plot summary. As a result of the attack, Mike spends a lot of time whining. And, huh. Yeah, so this person or persons interpreted it as Karen, Mike, and Vivian. Isn't it Julie? Vivian was the one who committed suicide. Anyway, are alive when the cultists are signaled to commit a mass suicide. I mean, technically that is, yeah, but that, does Mike really whine that much? I wouldn't really say so. He pontificates. He doesn't, he has a bunch of lines. I guess they read that as whining. Now, let's see. Apparently, I haven't seen Robin Wilcox, who plays Patrick, in something else. Again, I checked, and certainly not for the others. I would very much like to see him in something else. Now, let's see. The film debuted in limited release, but it garnered mostly favorable reviews from the few critics who saw it. And let's see. Yeah, so I copied in as many external reviews as I could, and unfortunately, the I did not write down how many I put in, but yeah, there are a lot, so I am gonna skim the, let's see, and I honestly thought I'd found a director who could potentially fill the boots vacated by John Carpenter when he lost his mojo. End of the line is that good. Now, so let's see. One of the reviewers praises the use of the setting of the, yeah, the yeah. While the DVD cover art gives away the presence of creatures, End of the Line is more a horrifying testament to the power of suggestion and mob mentality. I saw some reviewers, maybe it was mostly user reviews, making fun of the designs and saying, oh, it's like I said, the Wikipedia flashlight eyes and such. And I guess I can kind of see what they mean, but I do quite like the, yeah. So let's see. I apologize for the dead air. There's just these are really great reviews. I don't mean positive. I mean well written. And some of them are also positive. A number of them are positive, but I don't have a lot to add. Is the thing. And apparently one of the movies he made was like, what's it called? Like it's supposed to be all taking place in like without any breaks in between, like every second we see, you know, it's real time, I think is the term. And he has apparently since said that that was, yeah, that was way too, he shouldn't have, his idea shouldn't have been that um, ambitious. But he did apparently, like, he did finish that movie. That's pretty insane. That on a limited budget, like if you have a huge budget, sure you can do that sort of thing. But with a very limited budget, yeah, nah. Let's see. It's films like these that reaffirm my faith in the horror genre and its potential for originality. And this reviewer censored Robin, Robin Wilcock. I mean, that is his name, but yeah. Let's see. And I can imagine it's probably a family name from back when that word just meant like rooster. Now, Now, let's see. Huh. I actually thought that Nicholas Wright possessed a kind of Edward Norton charm in his performance, while Danny Blanco Hall's portrayal of Davis echoed the role of Dwayne Jones in the original 1968 Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, and let's see. Mm, Again, apologies for the dead air. Trying to find something that I want to comment on. Now, yeah, some of the reviews talk about the acting being a problem, and fortunately, Devereaux does keep the worst of the bunch in the least important roles, not always a given in these films, and the central speaking roles in the hands of actors who are only a bit awkward. The gore is more enthusiastic than effective. Hmm, I don't completely agree with that, but I do see what they mean. The editing's professional, sensible, and effective. There's a decided lack of those scenes that just won't stop for no good reason. No feeling of the film ever dragging its feet. Everything we see is actually part of the story Devereaux is telling. I agree. I really appreciate that. That's, you know, one of the possible weaknesses. There are a lot of potential weaknesses of bad horror movies, but one of the ones you really see is they didn't have enough material for 90 minutes, so they just pad the movie. Again, I'm not, if you love the Friday the 13th movies, for example, I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's, some of those movies have some padding. And the film's staging is usually atmospheric, providing an actual sense of the subway train and the surrounding tunnels as a physical space, which the director uses for good effect in various chases and sordid suspense scenes, and the script just happens to be tight and clever. I kind of wish I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of reading external reviews on some of these, that you find via IMDb for some of these movies that I'm doing videos on. The ones where there are not a lot of IMDb reviews, for example. I do kind of wish that, I don't know, I guess, and maybe it's something you can like suggest to, I don't know, maybe I guess I'll consider. I mean, nah, I probably won't myself since my wrists are still in pain. But it would be great if someone could clean up if, yeah, erase the dead links, because there are a lot of those. Like, I would say with at least one of these, I found a third of all the links I clicked were dead, and that really is unfortunate. That's, I mean, I clicked all excuse me, I clicked every link that, excuse me, that didn't say it was in a language I didn't speak. Every single one of them. A lot of people are not going to do that, and for some of these movies, the first 5 links are dead. A lot of people are just at that point going to be like, fine, I guess they're dead. Whatever. I'll move on to something else. And for a subgenre that relies on repetition and familiarity, often this is part of its charm, it's always good to come across a film that uses the slasher movie as a basis for groundbreaking social commentary and asks intelligent questions about the issues of today. Absolutely agree. And the subway train is sparsely populated, most made up of polite followers of the religious cult, dressed in what look like cocky Nazi uniforms. That's very well put. Returning from a rally. They sit glassy-eyed, a benign look on their faces. Now, let's see. They are committing bloody mayhem with love in their hearts. A distinctly creepy proposition. Yeah, it's still running. And to add to the sense of confusion and paranoia, you are not always immediately sure who belongs to the cult. Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, so certainly the influence of recent Asian horror is strong. Shadowy figures with their backs turned towards the camera is reminiscent of films such as The Eye from 2002. Yeah, this is a reviewer that, you know, says he kind of wishes that we saw more of the apocalypse. I understand that ultimately I don't agree. I think that it is very. I prefer the movie. I'm not saying nothing could have been better. If, like, let's say, completely hypothetical, I could change anything about this movie. I could change as much or as little as I wanted about this movie. I would say there's some of the acting that could be better. And there are, I guess that is probably the main, yeah, but I I I would not want it to show more. I really love that you don't see more than you do. Yeah, this reviewer mentions, yeah, subways are a great place for a horror movie. As the classic British flick Deathline 1992 showed, recent entries such as Creep 2004 and the awful Stag Night 2008 have more or less fluffed this seemingly easy setup, whereas End of the Line milks its setting for all it's worth. Yeah, I really, really love how the oh right, and this is one of those reviews that has a body count. Yeah, 21, 5 female and 16 male. The I think I really love that it's set in a subway. Honestly, if Devereaux himself felt like he had ideas enough, like if he made another 10 movies that are all like isolated and claustrophobic horror movies that have different ideas and different, different enough settings and such, I would watch all of them. If he could make, if all of them would be about this good. Now, some people say the acting is absolutely terrible, and some say it's good with a few exceptions. I'd say good with a few exceptions. And I saw at least one, maybe it was Rotten Tomatoes, one reviewer said, oh, it doesn't keep to a fast enough pace, and I completely disagree. I don't think I would change anything about the pace of this movie. Now, let's see. Okay, out of the, yeah, I have 184 pages of notes total. This is page 85, so that's why I'm skimming a lot instead of reading everything. That's part of it, at least. Sorry, that sounded oddly aggressive. And let's see. End of the Line, without giving away too much, is a film about mass hysteria and how everyday folks affected by feelings of paranoia, doom and gloom, and personal foibles gravitate to a delusional cult bent on saving the world from evil. Unlike your usual doomsday loons, this mainstream hybrid has chosen to be more proactive and has sent their most devout into densely populated areas where they await a signal to kill infidels and save their souls prior to offing themselves. Writer, director, producer, editor Maurice Devereaux nicely exploits the large dead spaces of subway platforms and cars used by night shift workers, as well as creepy characters that sometimes grace an otherwise banal ride home. Probably the most intriguing narrative choice is Devereaux putting the film on pause, just as heroes Karen and Mike are about to flee the train. Devereaux does a Rashomon by cutting back to the moment the train left the last station and realigns his focus on another character's encounter with a murderous zealot. And that's right. Blood Symbol is apparently also about the activities of a cult. Now, when I read about this movie on Netflix, I thought it sounded like Chud meets The Rapture, and with that simple thought, I was sold. Now, now, let's see. Excuse me. Another reviewer praising how scary the subway setting is. There's a throat slashing on display here that would make Savini proud. Now, let's see. Overall, everyone turned in a performance that was perfectly acceptable for the horror genre. Now, also, while the film does not pull any punches with the violence, Devereaux mixes the visceral with the psychological to great effect. Right, and I found the interview that, let's see. That's right, yeah, he did, they were nice enough to ask if, ask his opinion about putting the demons on the poster, and he said, okay. I work in publicity, so I know that sometimes you have to spoil things in the trailer and poster to help sell the film. So even if I prefer the less spoiler posters of other countries, the Japanese and German ones, excuse me, I respected Angry Bay's expertise and opinion that their version would be the most sellable and commercial. Hopefully they are right, as we are using the same ones for a US release. Now, let's see. Huh. I have to think that the sex scenes on the subway in the beginning between John, Tim Rosen, and Sarah, Nina Phyllis, felt like you were having a bit of fun with the typical slasher film sex scene. If so, weren't you afraid that some people would not see the irony and just read it as an awkward scene? Well, that scene does elicit a lot of laughs, but I think that the awkwardness is also due to the fact that it's far from the best scene in the film. No fault of my actors, I just ran out of time on set and wasn't able to stage things as well as I had hoped. Works for some in the way you mentioned, but seems ridiculous to others. It makes sense in the grander scheme of things. It is part of the mystery I had mentioned concerning the ending, but it's not my favorite scene, that's for sure. I personally found it work fine. Like he says, it's funny and it is like, yeah, it's very common for the, let's see. Yeah, that kind of situation. Let's see. And and yeah, they talk about the the Shining and let's see. It says I love Argento, Spielberg, the Coens, Raimi, but so many others will touch me in so many ways. I hope one day to make a film that will give others as much enjoyment as I got from the films I love. And now, huh. The body count that other person gave was 21, but this other one is 24. Maybe, let's see. Well, yeah, this one counts the baby that was aborted for one. Let's see. And suicide, maybe the other one didn't count. The cultists, once they get the second message. Yeah, I'm really glad to watch the movie again, and I definitely will watch it more times as well. Never trust people who wear dress shirts and ties and carry daggers. Daggers optional. This film makes it look so incredibly easy to navigate service tunnels, even when nervous. I know that I would be lost and or crying way more than anyone in the film. Several of the reviews talk about how scary cults and religious zealotry are to them, and how the film does a good job of using that. Okay, 132 of 140, 184, sorry. Let's see. Hmm. Several reviewers praise how well they did with the, what's it called? With the very limited budget. Right, and that was it. Okay, so yeah, from page, yeah, for the last 44 pages, it's IMDb user reviews. And there's 55 of them, so I copied in all of them, which is also part of why I put in the external reviews. So let's see. I didn't really I didn't catch it the first time around, but note the emphasis on muffins throughout the film. It's been theorized that perhaps something in the muffins was causing hallucinations, thus setting everything into motion. This theory seems to receive further support if you watch the beginning of the film carefully. There's a telling scar on Karen's shoulder. Hints that keep you guessing but don't beat you over the head. These really enrich the viewing experience. See, some people love that it only hints, but others say that it needed to be clearer. And again, I feel like, no, that's not really a case where, different people, yeah, different people have different, some people feel that it should have been more direct, and some really love that it wasn't. And, neither are really wrong, but I do think that the movie, it's very clear that the movie wanted the yeah, the movie is intentionally being, I don't know if I would say vague, but I feel like vague is an inherently negatively loaded word. They hint. more than explain. And I personally really love that. And it's completely clear that is what they meant to. It's not that they try to explain it, but the explanation doesn't make sense. For example, I've seen that sometimes in movies, but yeah, right. So this review was from someone who watched it at the Toronto International Film Festival. The only complaint I would make is it was about 30 minutes and a few characters too long. There was a bit too much characterization and conversation, and it slowed the plot down, though I'm quick to add that it never went too long before a scary, exciting part picked up again. If this is going to see major release, though, they'll definitely need to cut it. Anything over 2 hours is already too much, and this movie definitely didn't need that extra stuff. I guess they really did cut it down. Again, my version is 91 minutes with the end credits and 88 without, and no part of it is slow. I could definitely see how the like yeah, it's given how well defined the characters in the movie are. I could definitely see that I could imagine that there was 30 minutes that they ended up cutting that like gave even more like background for the characters, for example. One final warning, it is exceedingly gory. I have not seen so much blood and graphic violence in a long time, and it'll scare you. There are other reviewers who told, again, I'm not saying either are wrong, I'm just saying it's very clear that different people reviewing this movie and reviewing horror movies are legitimately, like, they have very different standards, I guess, boundaries. Because some say, there's not that much violence. But I guess when it's there, it's pretty good. It's not. There's some that say, chunks of the movie will pass without violence, which is technically true, but I don't know. Personally, I think it has the right amount of violence, if that makes sense. I don't think it is, I don't think there's so much that it gets to be, like, I've seen horror movies where there's so much violence that at some point it stops, like, in some of the movies I've seen. At a certain point it stops being scary and starts just being silly. It's kind of like watching, like, what's the term? Like, it gets to the point where you can't take it seriously anymore, where it feels like it's just, it's you can't take it in as a part of the movie anymore. It just feels like you're watching some, yeah. But I definitely do think that if they cut very much of the violence, as the way the movie is now, if they cut very much of it, it would end up having too little violence. I could see an argument for removing the C section. Let's go with that. I think ultimately, I don't think I'm the best. Excuse me, my back. I'm not the best judge of whether the movie accomplished what it wanted with that. Is it in? I mean, it is in bad taste, yes, but it is, like I saw in the review. The interview, that he meant to invoke the imagery of what's it called? The Manson family, the murders, and yeah, it does very effectively do that, and yeah, that is also what's it called, like religious. I forget what it was, but was it that apparently they thought the cult members thought that Charles Manson was like Jesus incarnate or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, yeah, he is invoking that image and saying, yeah, that's the thing. He's basically saying, what if the Manson family had way more members, and instead of sending these, what was it, 4 people to kill you know, a handful, a couple of people. What if there were millions of people around the world being sent out to kill? Because clearly they did, they even had rationalizations when they came into court. They were like, you've been putting violence on our TVs for all these years, and now we're not allowed to kill anyone. It's like that's such an insane justification. But yeah, the that's what he's invoking, and yeah, I ultimately I'm not gonna say yay or nay on is it too excessive, should that be in the movie, but at least it's not there. He put thought into it. It's not there just to be scared, just to be shocking. Now let's see. Okay, so yeah, so this is a really gave 5 out of 10 on IMDb, 2008. Okay, so yeah, this guy says the gore is minimal. It really, I mean, I've seen movies with, excuse me, with far more gore effects and where the gore went on for longer. Now, let's see. Yeah, this guy says, the ridiculous demons look like a theater play with red light bulbs in their eyes. And now, yeah, and this person says, things are scarier when you're a kid. And End of the Line is one of the rare movies that are extremely scary to adults as well. Now, yeah, and it points out, the acting it sometimes could be better. Some of the characters are a bit one-dimensional. Okay, so this person gave it 4 out of 10, and the subject line is Mormons Gone Wild. The one thing I liked about the movie was that the female characters in this movie did not fall into the useless category for traditional horror movie. I loved the hammer swinging girl. I give this movie a 4 out of 10 because I did not enjoy it enough to give it a 5. So, Some people wrote that they thought the movie was funny unintentionally or intentionally, and scared the bejesus out of me. And okay, I have skimmed almost all of the reviews by now. So let's see. It's I gotta admit, I when I first looked this up, I did not expect, like, there are literally people. Excuse me. Don't worry, I'm not using that grammatically incorrectly. There are literally people who say that this has some of the best this, that, and the other they've ever seen, and others say this has the worst this, that, and the other. And some of them are saying that, like, for example, acting. Some are saying it's really, really good, and others are saying, you know, it's some of the worst they've ever seen, and yeah. Okay, so this reviewer really hated Patrick. I will definitely say, if you find his character grating, this is probably a hard sit. 100%. I'd understand. I understand that. And I also understand people finding him to be more funny than creepy or scary. Personally, I find him creepy and scary. But yeah, some of these reviewers are saying this is some of the best gore and some of the most gores. Others are saying worst gore and least gore they've ever seen. Now, let's see. Huh. This reviewer said, oh, it's not too bad of an idea, but it's not very believable, and talks about various cult leaders, Charles Manson, Jim Jones, and said, this movie was nothing special, just some movie built up on history of cult leaders. I mean, Okay, so they didn't like the movie. At least they appreciate that effort was put into it. Excuse me. So, those were all of my notes, and yes, I am going to briefly hold up the cover. I'm going to think about if there's anything I want to say before potentially messing up the autofocus. I think I have said everything. Everything I've wanted to say is in this review, one of the other reviews I did on it, videos I did on it, or, huh, or possibly it's in a written review that I just don't have anything to add to. So, yeah. So, my cover looks like this. Let's see if I can capture the light. Give a good close up. There we go. And the back of the cover is that, I quite like Neil swinging the axe as such a major. You've got it's a little hard to see, but well, yeah, that's pretty easy to recognize. That's the ancient business guy. That is Julie running through the subway tunnels, and that is what's her name, Karen, drowning in the, what's it called, the purgatory. That's what I ended up deciding on calling it. So yeah, let's see. So I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I'll catch you next time.